FDA does issue an alert, and not only issues alert, they say prepare, because not only is this infection moving towards humans, remember, this is not just about quote unquote a sickness that you need a mask for. This is affecting the food system. Completely different than 2020. Is it real or is it not? That does not matter. Because if you're not raising your own food and you're still dependent on the supermarket and the meats in the store, by them issuing this preparedness warning, it makes it where they not only control maybe you, and you say, oh, they don't control me. But what about the food? If they can stop this movement of this certain style food because of quote unquote infection or sickness, how serious is it for you? Let's jump into it. Let's talk about it today. What we need to know, what we don't need to know, what we think about it, and does that all matter when it comes down to the fact of if we're dependent on a grocery store, their say is ultimate. I don't know. Let's talk about it today.
So just sit with me, talking to the night until the morning, building chemistry.
Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. Did we not talk about 2024 being crazy? And it has started off absolutely nuts. Think about it. When have we ever thought that we would see the northern lights and the beauty of the sky last night? I mean, who thought we would see that in South Mississippi? People would travel thousands of miles to go north to the very northernmost parts of the world to catch it. And mostly everybody saw it last night at their home. Strange things are happening. It is crazy times. Solar flares, crazy solar eclipses. It's nuts. But we talked about this, not only the God side of it, the human side of it. Now we're facing a tough election. We know that. We've talked about that. But now we're seeing the talks of the avian flu and how we kind of relate it back to 2020. Oh, well, this is the same thing they tried last time. It could be. But there's a major difference when it comes to the avian flu and the difference with 2020. The commissioner of FDA warns that the highly pathogenic avian influenza will start spreading to humans as he releases his findings on May 8th. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration is preparing for a scenario of highly pathogenic avian flu spreading. The virus, like all viruses, is mutating. We've talked about mutation before. We need to continue to prepare for the possibility that it might and probably will jump to humans. Now, that's one part of this, the sickness part. And that's the part that we should have a friendly respect about. You sitting in front of elderberry and blueberry bushes and a lot of my kitchen garden. We grow foods because we want to stay medicinally healthy. We want to benefit our bodies by eating as good as possible to build our immunity up, to stay away from sickness. That's one side of this. Like 2020, that is a big deal, to make sure that we're healthy and make sure that we have a friendly respect, no matter if it's real or not. What did I tell you? That it can still stop the flow of goods. It can still stop the supply chain. It can still stop you from maneuvering, all because the players that be have that kind of power over Americans. Now, I know people are like, oh no, they didn't stop me. It did stop us from going to certain places and doing certain things because of their power. Here's the main difference though from 2020 to now. This is a Food and Drug Administration releasing this, not just the CDC, not just the medical side of it. It's the food side of it. Now, if we see this mutation happening towards humans, they're already saying it went to the livestock, it went to the chickens. We are now seeing not only the sickness side of it, we now can see the fact of, well, what about the food side of it? This gives us the right or the way to manipulate food even more. So does it matter if the sickness is bad on humans or not? It could be very, very simple to go through and we may pass through it with no problem. May not be a problem at all. But if they can say, well, the food system's broke too, and we've got to cull all these animals, we got to make sure that we take these farms offline. If you're dependent on a grocery store, you're dependent on that food to get to the grocery store, that means shortages happen. He even states in this article, the commissioner, remember, it does not matter if you believe what he says. If he is the FDA commissioner, he has power. It's kind of like Fauci a few years back. It didn't matter if you liked the guy. It didn't matter if you trusted the guy. He had the power to do what he wanted to do because we gave him the power. This guy's the same way. If all of a sudden he says we're going to take these farms offline from being able to send to the supply chain, to be able to send food because we've got to cull all these animals or we've got to quarantine all these animals, that will affect you. Not because of the sickness in humans. Not only can they figure out what to do on the human side with pharmaceuticals, they're now saying, well, this will affect the food. Your food, your meat, chicken, cattle. Isn't it amazing that some of the biggest chicken providers started dabbling in other proteins, such as bug proteins, just the last few years? It's weird, isn't it? You should listen to this, because this is exactly what we heard back a few years ago. It says, the influenza, also known as the bird flu, has recently started spreading among cattle and other species. One person in Texas has been confirmed and dealt with going into the hospital. So far, genetic sequencing, listen to this, and other data indicate that the flu poses little threat to people. Now listen, there are no signs that the flu is going person to person yet, according to the U.S. official. But they are working on getting treatments, tests, and these ready for that change. Now they're already preparing to get ready for the mutation. Now viruses mutate, we know that. That's been the case for years and years and years and years. But now we're seeing, again, we're talking the human side. We're talking, okay, we're going to get the pharmaceuticals ready. We're going to get the treatments and tests ready on the human side. We've been busy getting prepared for this virus because it will mutate in a way that jumps from humans and even to a larger level, says Dr. Califf from the Senate Appropriations Committee Agricultural Subcommittee. The patient in Texas primarily experienced one symptom: inflamed eyes. Neither the patient nor many of the cows have been infected suffered any major symptoms of the H5N1 that is commonly caused the death of birds. The real worry is as it jumps to humans and it goes to their lungs, when that happens, what other part does it hurt? What other symptoms does it cause? Will it mutate anymore? Dr. Tedros, again, our buddy at the WHO, says the virus does not show signs of having adaptation to spread among humans, but more surveillance is needed. We need to surveil what the protocols would be if all of a sudden we see this mutation take place. Many experts consulted the U.S. government that they are concerned that they saw the influenza jump to cattle, and now they're worried about pigs. Now they're worried about other chickens, other farms, and even the humans that interact with farming practices. So is this a way to say, you know what? We may need to keep humans away from doing this farming thing, this homesteading, this regenerative ag thing, because we could see a major spread of something. So for containment purposes in the animal, it's no risk to humans, but for the animal purposes, we may need to move to some other style farming, some other style of movement of animals, because what we're doing may not work. You see, they're already setting up for those conversations. The risk is still so low, but the likelihood of mutation to jump to humans, to jump to more animals, to be more widespread, we should be prepared. And right now I feel like we are ill prepared, Dr. Califf added. Current U.S. rules mandate testing of some cattle before being moved to other states. So you're already seeing the fact, we talked about this the other day, you're starting to see containment of cattle, containment of chicken houses until they test more. And again, testing means more surveillance, more overreach from the government side. And again, I'm not saying those things are bad. I'm just saying those practices cause supply chain disruptions, cause for more overreach in government, and also causes for the fact of, what are they actually testing with? How are they testing these birds? That's a big deal. Testing livestock, that's a big deal. The agency confirmed that the H5N1 infections are now hitting 36 herds across 9 states. Now that's way different than just a few weeks ago when it was one area in Texas. Now it's 36 herds across 9 states, including Colorado, Kansas, and Michigan. Kansas being one of the biggest livestock hubs, especially for beef. Data from infected cattle indicate that this H5N1 began circulating in 2023. About 70 farm workers have been monitored in Colorado, and they will be tested and checked for symptoms later this week. That was a lot, but let's go through what we just went through, and let's get talking points. FDA leader and WHO leader, and also the leader of the agricultural subcommittee, are all stating low risk right now, but we need to be prepared. We need to start looking at testing. We need to look at medicines, pharmaceuticals, things that go in your arm, and we need to be prepared on that aspect for the human mutation, because we know the mutation will come. Now the next conversation is, when it mutates, are we going to see just a heavier spread, or are we going to see it mutate to a point where it's going to cause more outbreaks of the sickness that will cause respiratory issues? They're saying right now the mutation from the chickens are still getting the brunt of the respiratory problems when it spreads to livestock and even the humans. So far they're not as worried about it, but they want to be prepared for the next mutation. Now it is affecting the movement of cattle already. You've noticed how high your beef prices have been. Actually, on a lot of the labels like Hamburger Helper and things like that, they're saying try mixing other things like hot dogs in it. Try mixing other meats with it. Try doing it without meat. You're starting to see that programming of, well, do you really need the meat? Do you really need the beef? Let's get away from beef. You're already seeing that push. And then did you hear the conversation that they had? Well, when people have these farming practices, and if they're not prepared and they don't have the testing that they're needing, the smaller farms, the people that have the cattle with the pigs, with the chickens, with the ducks and geese, this could be a problem, because then we could see a spread across all livestock. Now listen to that. Who did they just say? That's not the conventional farmer. That's not the multi-billion-dollar farming agricultural farm that they're talking about there. They're talking about the common Joe, the common guy who has a homestead, the common guy who has a farmer, the kind of guy that just farms his own land and provides his own food. Did you hear that? Let's go back. What we're scared of seeing is the movement to pig and to other livestock from chicken and cattle. And he was talking about on the smaller scale, if you do not have protocol, do you not have surveillance, do you not have regulation set up and testing, what's to say that they want you buying that extra hog or that extra geese or that extra cow when we don't know what you're actually doing with them? Now, I don't sell eggs to the public anymore, but when we were doing that at one time, they'd come test our birds. They'd come in here and swab every bird and swab our areas. That could be just for safety. You want to make sure that the food is safe, but however, we are consenting adults, and it's amazing that we have to have that government overreach to come in and just check my herd, to check my chickens to sell some eggs. How much overreach are we going to see, and how much, as a typical guy that's raising food, your typical farmer, your homesteader, are they going to be able to sustain all that extra regulation and all the extra surveillance? That's a big thing to think about. Now, one more thing. Did you hear those two words I just used? Regulatory bodies and surveillance. WHO and FDA, again, no matter if you trust them or not, no matter if you believe them or not, they have the power because they've been given power by our elected officials. Did you hear what both of them stated? We are going to need more surveillance. We're going to need more government's rights to look into what's going on. So we're seeing more of a time where we're not talking about just the human sickness, we're talking about the fact of the food now, to where we can interact more on farms, we can regulate more on farms, we can do more testing on farms to make sure we can, quote unquote, slow the spread. So we're coming away with the smaller farmer may be hurt, more surveillance and regulation is needed. Unlike 2020, where it affected just sickness and the movement of people, this may now affect the movement of people along with the movement of food and also the shortages of food. We went to an agricultural store yesterday, me and Misty. We had a few hours to go, and we just went walking around. We wanted to buy a new orange plant and lemon plant to grow as trees. Well, a few years ago, we bought some of those for, 15, 20 bucks, and we'd pick up an extra blueberry bush to plant for the bees, and we're always looking to add to our farm. And Misty hadn't checked prices in a long time, and she just went by and she said, this orange tree is $85. And we're talking about, like a 3-gallon topsoil container, and the tree may have been 2 foot. $80-something, where we were buying it for 15 to 20 bucks just maybe 3 years ago. The cost of food is already crazy. The way to grow food is already crazy. I challenge you to buy from Survival Seeds because they're dirt cheap. You can buy a whole case for $1 a pack of seeds and buy those little homesteader cases and farm cases, no doubt. But the seeds in that store yesterday, where we were seeing $1 pack used to, for non-GMO heirloom or organic seeds, people were paying $3 to $5 to $7 a pack. Now, is that expensive? Can you still purchase it? Absolutely. But from $1 to $5, think of that increase. That's not double, that's not triple, that's not quadruple, that's more than that. So you're talking about what, 300, 400, 500% markup? Think about that. So if we see our food system going up by 30, 40, 50% on average, the way we grow food going up 100 to 20, 200, 300% average, how can people grow their own food? Oh, they can't. The more regulatory, the more things that happen to where farmers have to say, we have to do this, 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 this to surveil and take care of the testing. What if all of a sudden they say, well, you can't do that anymore? Well, that hurts the movement and the sales of goods off a farm. Well, that means it goes back to the bigger providers, and you're stuck with a supply chain and a food system that is fully ran by the biggest ag known to man, the biggest players in the business. And if they want to take the heirloom seed off and give you processed garbage, how are you going to solve that? Remember, they're hurting the local farm, they're hurting the sales of the farm, and they're providing one place to buy food. That's a big deal. That's what we're talking about when we start hearing these conversations of the spread of something that's not only sickness for humans, sickness for animals, which is the food system. How much can it affect the food? What if all of a sudden we hear, well, you know, their fecal matter is passing through their bowels, and all of a sudden, you know, their manure loads and all is going on the ground. It's hurting the ground. So we're gonna have to till up all that bad ag. We're going to have to till up all those grounds. We're going to have to take away from all that compost and fertilizer that you're using in the gardens. That's dangerous stuff. It could spread the disease. It's so close to that point of break, to where our food system is that fragile. One hiccup, one little hiccup, could cause a major deterioration of our food system. And remember, no matter if you believe it or not, that's how they can impact you. That's how they can handle the movements. That's how they can make sure that you are right where they want you to be. That's how they can control your food. It only takes, hey, we need to worry about this. We need to be prepared for this mutation. This mutation can affect you, but not only you, the food. It's a big deal. Now, you can call me a tinfoil hat wearer. You can say that I'm crazy. You can say that I'm pushing fear. It's not. The point of what I'm saying, though, is you better start growing food. You better start making sure you have some chickens with some eggs. You better make sure you have some rabbits that you're growing for meat and food. You better start growing some gardens. Check out Survival Seeds, such as the ones that provide the seeds for $1 a pack. You can't beat that deal. And actually, there's a little discount you can get in the bottom. It's like 10%. Do not lose out on the fact of making your food system possible more local. If they start knocking these farmers out because of regulation, because of extra testing, that affects your food system. So when people say, oh, well, we're still buying from the farmer down the road. Well, if you're not growing it, what if that farmer says, I just can't deal with the extra regulation, extra cost, the extra licensures? It can happen. When we had to get eggs to be sold off farm, we had to get all these extra permits and licensures, and we're in a very conservative state. What's to say that starts taking place? Because, well, government wants to keep people safe, so they want to make sure the food system's not tainted. So we've got to take all these farmers, if they don't have special permitting and special access to government workers, we just can't allow them to sell to the public anymore. You don't believe that can happen? It can happen just like that. Pay attention to what's going on. Guys, it's not meant to scare you. It's meant to say prepare, because if they're preparing to control different parts and different facets of your life, why don't you prepare to be more independent and more sustainable? That's my challenge to you. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think about this. It does not matter if it's a spoof, if it's real, if it's dangerous, or if it's just a way to manipulate. They still can do it, because we have given them the power in America to these leaders to set policy. And that was a big mistake. Guys, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. God bless. Happy homesteading, y'all.